And it's 15, correct? 15. I hope you didn't eat a lot on lunch. I'm really honored to be here, and I'm deeply grateful to Sanjay of European Space Agency for providing me with the opportunity to address you today. I'm also grateful to Sam Adlin of Space Solar Power for nominating me to speak. And I would like to thank both Sanjay and Martin Saltau for honoring me with their presence at the COP28 summit in Dubai, when I organized a special session on space solar power under the auspices of the UAE Space Agency. This was the first time that space solar power was discussed at the COP summit. Today, I've already met with a couple of old friends. Most notably is John Menkins, with whom I had the privilege of working between 2007 and 2012. Pleasure to see you again, John. While I was living in Boston, Massachusetts. I had lived there for 26 years before recently moving back to the Middle East. Allow me to kickstart my address with a quote from His Royal Highness Prince William, the Duke of Cambridge. In an interview with the BBC on the 14th of October 2021, ahead of the first Earthshot Prize, he stated, "Greatest brains and minds should be trying to repair this planet, not trying to find the next place to go and live." He was referring to the current space race and the drive to promote space tourism and colonization of Mars, and I would add asteroid mining to the mix. In the time allotted to me, I will attempt to answer 5 overarching questions. I think I will know how to use this. The green arrow. Thank you. Why should I command your attention? Why do I believe space solar power may have reached an inflection point? What are the challenges facing space solar power? What are the potential development models? What needs to be done to bring this novel concept out of the lab and into the real world? Despite being involved in space solar power for 38 years this month and investing a substantial amount of my own funds in its development, I will address the topic of space solar power not as an advocate, but as an energy citizen seeking practical solutions to climate change. My approach will be objective, unbiased, and independent. Ever since my wife and I were introduced to the idea of space solar power by Professor Yoshihiro Hamakawa of Osaka University in April 1985, we have been committed to realizing this concept. In 2007, we formed Free Access to Energy Consortium in the United States and partnered with the late Professor Majid Kazemi, one of the world's foremost nuclear scientists and the TEPCO Professor of Nuclear Engineering at MIT. We also partnered with my wonderful friend John Menkins, who, as you know him, is one of the anchors and the leading space solar power scientist and a former head of advanced concepts at NASA. And I also partnered with his partner at the time, Professor Nobuyuki Kaya, one of the world's leading wireless power transmission scientists from Kobe University in Japan. We even engaged the X Prize Foundation to crowdsource the best ideas from around the world. Thanks to Menkins and Kaya, we witnessed firsthand a demonstration of terrestrial wireless power transmission co-sponsored by the Discovery Channel in 2007, where electricity was transmitted, albeit a minuscule amount, but it was transmitted wirelessly across 100 kilometers in the Earth's atmosphere. In February 2012, and in collaboration with Menkins and Kaya again, we submitted a space solar power roadmap for Japan, partly in response to the earthquake, tsunami, and nuclear meltdown crisis of March 2011. This was part of the Japan Task Force, a not-for-profit that my wife and I had established in 2011 in partnership with the Abu Dhabi Water and Electricity Authority and the Japan Bank for International Cooperation, JBIC. In 2015, we reluctantly suspended our work on space solar power for 2 reasons. I lost one of my scientific partners. Professor Kazemi had passed away unexpectedly at a very young age, and this was a major blow to our efforts. The second one is I was not able to satisfy myself that space solar power could be deployed safely to serve distributed energy applications. which is where the entire energy paradigm was and will continue to be headed. Terrestrially, our work speaks to itself. We know the energy business extremely well from our experience managing over 6 gigawatts of electricity capacity in mainland China, Taiwan, Tunisia, South Korea, and the United Arab Emirates. We believe that space solar power is at an inflection point. 4 drivers have come together to substantially strengthen its value proposition. And I have to confess that I'm quite impressed with what Sanjay and Solaris is doing. They are definitely on the right track. Driver number 1, the vast renewable electricity requirements for net zero, which simply cannot be met in time. Around 32 terawatt of renewable electricity capacity will be needed by 2050, of which less than 20 terawatts would become available based on current capacity addition trends. I have not even factored in the surge in demand for electricity to feed data hubs for artificial intelligence, cloud storage, and crypto mining. The IEA estimates that power demand for data centers would double over the coming 4 years to reach 1,000 terawatt hour by 2026, the increase being equivalent to twice the total power demand of the United Kingdom. And here lies an opportunity for space solar power given the type of companies involved. In fact, based on our modeling, we do not believe that countries and companies will be able to reach their net zero targets by 2050 without space solar power. The second driver, just to let you know, this the net zero for the IEA, major overhaul of the energy paradigm is required, nothing short of that. The second driver is the role of hydrogen that is expected to play in the energy transition. Renewable electricity on its own will not get us to net zero. Low carbon and renewable hydrogen will play a complementary role to renewable electricity. The IEA and IRENA have determined that 500 to 600 million tons a year of low carbon and renewable hydrogen will be needed to be produced by 2050. To satisfy additionality requirements, which will soon become mandatory, electrolyzers will not be allowed to use grid electricity. Instead, they will be required to procure or develop their own dedicated renewable electricity capacity, creating demand for up to 5 terawatt of additional renewable electricity capacity for electrolysis. Not only does this open up new market applications for space solar power, but it also facilitates the delivery of electricity through dedicated and centralized hydrogen supply chains, complete with virtual pipelines linked to demand centers across the world, rather than trying to adapt the space solar power model to distributed energy applications, which is one of the reasons why I stopped working on it in 2012. The third driver is the commercialization of space. You know about this more than I would ever know. It is growing at an unprecedented pace. According to a report published last week by the World Economic Forum, please take a note of it. It's a very good report. Commercial space activities are going to expect to reach 1.8 trillion by 2035, up from 620 billion last year. This expansion has already led to the reduction in space launch costs, increased launch activity, payload capacity per launch, and the use of reusable launch vehicles, with medium to large launch vehicles and innovative post-launch facilities and services to be developed globally. The fourth driver is the momentum created by 45 public, private, and academic institutions from 19 countries around the world who are engaged today in space solar power development, some of which are represented at this conference today. I will give you a quick preview of the challenges. Most of them you will already be familiar with, but this is a really big issue, and I'm not going to dwell on it because, you know, at the end of the day, it's not up to us. It is up to the financiers and the bankers. They need to be satisfied that the risks are mitigated, identified, mitigated, and some of the risks would need to be insured. So there are other challenges. You know, one of the biggest challenges in my view is laws and regulations. They are not fit for purpose currently. Not only incomplete, they are not fit for purpose. The second one is the challenges relating to ownership and governance. State, private, public-private partnership models may not be adequate to satisfy global public interest. Third, there are challenges relating to financing mechanisms. They are also not fit for purpose, nor there are enough of it to go around. So there's a question earlier, does SSP compete? Of course it does. It competes for capital. A lot of solutions are required, but the competition is for capital. Fourth, there are the challenges relating to technology readiness. Luckily, no technological breakthroughs are required, but none of the technologies have been demonstrated at a scale or at a price that is required for space solar power to be competitive with terrestrial applications. Certain technologies may be categorized as sensitive dual-use technologies, subject to export controls. So there are a lot of other issues that are nuanced in this respect. Fifth, there is relating to safety. I'm hope that Sanji will find someone to do the safety side, because in our analysis, it's the most important one. So the impact of wireless power transmission via microwave or lasers on persons, animals, property, and the environment are not fully tested and are not regulated for longer exposures and higher densities. And you cannot rely on microwave oven regulations to do terrestrial solar power. So it's a lot of work that needs to come. Sixth, there are challenges about market applications, levelized cost of energy. It's a flawed model, by the way. It's a flawed metric. We're working now on revising it and adding life cycle assessment into it and financing cost as well. But even on that, it's not very clear that there will be advantages over terrestrial applications. Military applications, the military will be willing to pay a premium price for energy delivered to combat zones. And a lot of you might be interested. This would be our first client. We will have a lot of problems with this, as I will explain, and I think it's going to be problems with the rest of the world. We need to really be very, very cautious what this technology is going to be used for. Seventh, there are challenges about environmental impact. Some people talked about the life cycle assessment. We've done some back of the envelope assessments. If you add scope 3, upstream scope 3 emissions, you might be at a disadvantage vis-a-vis terrestrial sources. So I'm not sure there is a saving there based on our back of the envelope analysis. And of course, there is the eighth challenge is the lack of global coordination. You have all these wonderful 45 entities, but there is no collaboration between them, and there is no incentive to get them to share information. Having said that, I remain convinced that if we work together, we will find innovative solutions to overcome these challenges. We can start by aggressively positioning space solar power as a climate change technology solution alongside many other technologies currently being deployed, commercialized, and being developed at different stages of maturity. And as you can see, this is where we fit. And when space solar power comes, it will have an indirect and direct impact on so many of the other technology solutions that are currently being developed around the world. We have identified 3 potential models for space solar power development. There is the ITER project model, which is being used for nuclear fusion. But as you know, it's government-led, so state-led. Governments have limited funding capabilities to bring this technology to commercial maturity. But this is one model that SSP could have a look at. The other model is project finance, which currently being used to develop and finance independently developed utility-scale solar and wind projects around the world. Under this model, each project party would need to underwrite its own risks, launch, satellite, terrestrial, and some risks are not insurable. For example, space debris hitting the device. There is also overlap and completion and operation risks that will also need to be mitigated and covered. The model has not benefited from any major innovations since its introduction to the electricity sector in 1996, when the World Bank provided loan guarantees to the world's first independent power project, and it happened to be in Pakistan. And I happened to be part of the team that actually put it together. What we are trying to do is a supranational model that I'm going to elaborate a little bit about, and this is where we are now establishing our entire rationale for BeamShot. Just going to give you an idea of ITER. This is one of the ways where Japan is conducting its public engagement using anime and cartoon. We also need to think about these ways to get to the consumers. This brings me, we're confronted really with two options at the final analysis. Option number one, do we work within the confines of the current legal and multilateral system, or should we attempt to bypass it altogether and create something new? This is really where we are at today. In an excellent book released last year titled Permacrisis, the authors Gordon Brown, your former British PM, Mohammed Al-Aryan and Michael Spence stated, ours is a broken world, a permacrisis rocked by shocks leading to increasingly low growth, high economic uncertainty, climate emergency, and greater divisions between countries and within them. To fix our broken world, they are suggesting, they made an analogy to kintsugi, and my wife, who's Japanese, worked with me so that I can get the pronunciation right. Kintsugi, a Japanese art form used to fuse broken pottery pieces together. In the book, they propose reforming the multilateral system and its institutions, the UN, the WTO, the World Bank, the IMF. However, for us at Beamshot, and having worked for one of these multilateral organizations, we are not optimistic. We believe that the time has come to disrupt the status quo in property rights, in project finance, intellectual property and technology commercialization, using a new set of global tools that are better to kickstart, and what better project to kickstart this change and this disruption than space solar power. We resumed our efforts with space solar power last summer after receiving strong encouragement from the Japan Ministry of Trade and Industry and from Dr. Toyoda. You will hear a lot about him. He's the CEO of Space One, the equivalent of SpaceX in Japan. We are on the cusp of launching the BrainShot platform as a not-for-profit organization to pool the most talented resources from around the world together. I'm going to try to skip a lot now, just to give an idea what BrainShot is all about. 8 tenets: global governance and ownership, equitable access, environmental responsibility, safety in operations, peaceful applications only, and the competitive is very important, and the fact that we don't need to disrupt any of the surroundings, and to have a replicable and scalable system. We will objectively identify and assess the risks and challenges, vigorously stress test them, and stress test the proposed solutions. We have already carried out some of this assessment and have come up with some preliminary solutions. We will dynamically calibrate our approach by responding to market trends and energy developments in real time. These trends and developments will accelerate at an unprecedented rate now that generative AI and its large language models will be making their mark in many fields associated both directly and indirectly with space solar power. Empowering consumers to become key stakeholders in this journey is absolutely critical. We will engage proactively with the public through mainstream and social media, gaming, and the metaverse, capitalizing on the findings of surveys conducted by the likes of Bain Capital, McKinsey, BCG, and others, indicating that consumers, boomers, millennials, Gen Z, are willing to pay a premium for low carbon products and fuels. One of the key objectives for us is to structure a financing mechanism for first of a kind projects. Menkins showed it in his, it's called FOAK. This is a major roadblock for the energy industry. And the reason why: energy is one of the very few industries that has 2 valleys of death. And this is why VC was never successful in energy. They misunderstood that the second valley of death is so deep, it's way beyond their own resources. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars in the case of SSP. So essentially, the type of capital you need is, it has to be, they require large capital investments in the hundreds and millions of dollars, earning infrastructure type returns with a venture capital risk profile. These are 2 different asset classes that will need to be combined. Very, very difficult to do, but this is where we are now. And just to give an idea, I have charted some timelines. This is where we are today. Hydrogen and derivatives, this is the industry that I'm in, and carbon capture, utilization, and sequestration. Coming very soon is small modular reactors for nuclear fission and direct air capture, and we fit there with nuclear fusion. So there will be a run on the capital, on competition for capital between these two, and we need to keep our eye on that. Sorry. So I will conclude with two thoughts. We need to be very careful how we position solar power as a net zero solution for climate change. I don't know how many of you have been aware of this. We need to learn from two failed attempts by Switzerland when it submitted a draft resolution in 2019, and more recently last February to create a UN expert group to examine the risks and opportunity of solar geoengineering. The resolution was voted down both in 2019 and earlier this year. In addition, a group of 400 scientists responded for a calling for a non-use agreement on solar geoengineering. Their concerns apply equally to space solar power. Second, and finally, we need to put ourselves in the shoes of our investors and financiers. We need to create quick wins to justify the risk we are asking them to assume. What if we don't reach the finish line? It's a possibility. We need to be realistic. By then, significant resources would have been spent. At a minimum, we would have created at least 2 spin-offs. We would have demonstrated, commercialized, and deployed high-power wireless transmission over medium to long distances terrestrially and in space. We would have created a multidisciplinary industrial and services ecosystem, which capitalizes on the synergies between energy, aerospace, and telecoms, along with the related and support industries. Can you imagine what benefits this integrated ecosystem can bring to the world, both terrestrially and in space? Thank you very much for listening.